Hello, and thank you for joining us on this Atlantic Council event in honor of Veterans Month. My name is Greg Duque. I'm co-director of the Veterans Advanced Energy Project and a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center. I'll be your moderator today. I'm pleased to be joined by an esteemed panel as we discuss veterans' perspectives on clean energy and national security. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. This event is on the record. We are currently live streaming on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We encourage you to post about what you hear today and share on social media using the hashtag ACEnergy and by tagging us at AC Global Energy. If you'd like to participate in our conversation, we encourage you to submit your questions in the question and answer portal located at the bottom of your Zoom screen at any time during the event, and we'll incorporate them as appropriate. Please note, however, only those directly engaging via Zoom will be able to submit questions to our event today. I'd also like to give you a little bit of context on the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center and the Veterans Advanced Energy Project. The Global Energy Center promotes energy security by working alongside government, industry, civil society, and public stakeholders to devise pragmatic solutions to the geopolitical, sustainability, and economic challenges of the changing global energy landscape. The Veterans Advanced Energy Project designed to drive U.S. leadership in advanced energy by recruiting, equipping, and empowering military veterans who understand the importance of evolving energy landscape to our future security and prosperity. So let's talk about veterans' perspective on clean energy and national security. We're very fortunate today to have four panelists who are deeply experienced experts, steeped in the intersection of clean energy and national security, and our veterans. Heather Tackle is president and CEO of Power Options, a nonprofit mission-driven energy buying consortium that is a trusted advisor and resource for nonprofits and public entities in New England. With nearly 500 members, their collective strength yields optimal pricing and stability for the entire membership of organizations, both large and small. Heather was a fellow in our Veterans Advanced Energy Project here at Atlantic Council and is a graduate of Boston University School of Management and Harvard Business School. She's a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Kevin Johnson is the president of Glide Path Federal Solutions. Kevin is on the board at the Clean Energy Leadership Institute, the Board of American Resilience Project, and co-founder of Clean Capital. And he is on our Veterans Advanced Energy Project Advisory Committee, I'm pleased to say. Kevin is a veteran of the United States Army. Dan Stahlmiller is the Ohio Energy Policy Director at the Natural Resource Defense Council. He was Sierra Club Senior Campaign Representative for Ohio and Kentucky, Senior Regulatory Analyst for the Office of the Ohio Consumers Council, and a veteran of the Ohio Army National Guard. Mark Goodwin is entering the 20th year of his career in the renewable energy sector. As CEO of Apex Clean Energy, Mark leads the execution of corporate strategy. Since Apex founding, Mark has built a team of more than 200 professionals focused on creating customized energy solutions for businesses, government, and utilities. Mark is a former naval officer and a helicopter pilot. So let me turn first to you, Heather, for our first question. Of course, prior to grad school and Power Options, served as a Marine Corps logistics officer. How did this experience inspire you to transition to clean energy? And if so, how?
Well, thanks, Greg, for having me to the Atlantic Council. And also just please a shout out to all the veterans for Veterans Month. Appreciate your service. It's been a while since I've been in. And so, of course, more and more with many years behind me, appreciate the service that the veterans are doing in today's day and age, even more so. It wasn't obvious to me in the Marines, Greg, that my path was going to go down the road of clean energy. It didn't happen until afterward where I made my leap into the industry But it was due to my experience in the Marines that I saw in hindsight. Number one, I was very thankful that the Marines threw me into logistics. Very important skill set and experience that I got that is very relevant to the energy industry, of course, understanding distribution chains of fuel, setting up off-grid and resiliency, which I now see we're off-grid and resilient distributed energy systems. When I built the field headquarters post for our battalions and such when we were forward deployed. But the most important thing that came from the experience really was the hunger to have a mission. The Marines built that in me. I can say that I did not have that hunger before the Marines. And after the Marines, I was missing that when I was in business consulting and staying up at 2 a.m. cranking out spreadsheets as a young grad school intern. It just was not as motivating as refueling a tank battalion at 2 a.m. And so I had that aha moment in the middle of the night that I was not being fulfilled with a mission as I had in the Marine Corps. And it led me back to clean energy, and clean energy, then became apparent how critical it is, of course, to our national security, which I, of course, cared about as well as a former Marine.
So I've heard it offered that tanks do suck up a bit of gas. So that certainly was an acute experience in terms of, what I think former Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis called the tether of fuel. That, in his words, in this, I think, congressional confirmation hearing, he said was limiting our ability to shoot, move, and communicate, our ability to maneuver on the battlefield. Do you remember any particular incidents where, that sort of ubiquitous line of fuel trucks stretching down to the border? Was that Iraq or Afghanistan that you had that experience, out of curiosity?
I was out of Afghanistan and I got to meet Mattis on our ship when we were deployed there way back in the day, in the early days of Enduring Freedom 1. And yeah, it was critical. Everything depended upon the fuel line. For us, in that role that I had at that time was ship to shore, and how to get it. And you're even more constrained, of course, from that movement than you are in the trucks and the fuel line there. So I tended to be the most popular person as well. It helped because, plans continued, were all evolved around, can we get fuel and how far can it stretch us? And Mattis was a genius in seeing that very early on, and that criticality to the services that I think is where we are today, why the DoD is a leader in thinking about national security and clean energy intersection.
Don't want to culminate in the face of the enemy, right? I have a picture of you carrying the gas can following the tank down there. Kevin, allow me to ask you the same question. How did your military experience translate to raising and investing capital for clean energy projects at Clean Capital, particularly when you were accustomed at that point to getting a paycheck every month, whether we need it or not, right? And then now you're in big capital investment for clean energy. How did that happen, and how does it inform your current position as president of Glide Path Federal?
Well, thank you, Greg, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to share my story. It's been a fun week talking to a lot of veterans over the past few days about my experiences in the clean energy space. And similar to Heather, my time overseas deployed really shaped my worldview. I was very fortunate after I graduated from West Point. I was stationed in Germany. So one of my memories before leaving to go deploy to Iraq was watching, seeing these wind turbines coming up. And this is 2003, very early, as wind was starting to grow in Europe. And it really struck my mind that I hadn't seen that in the United States before I left. And off we go to Iraq in 2004 to 2005. And I was stationed in a small town called Beiji, about a half hour north of where Saddam was captured, about 30 days after he was captured. And didn't know ahead of time that that is the oil refining capital of Iraq. And so as the insurgency grew in that time frame of 2004, the tip of the Sunni Triangle, as they call it, we had a lot of attacks on the oil infrastructure. Regardless of our mission that we were out there doing, it was constantly in the shadow of oil fires. And that really shaped my experience, and having my soldiers ask me every day, as I mentioned yesterday to another group of veterans, what are we doing here? When are we going home? And what are we doing here? And it really lasting memory on me of the intersection of the oil infrastructure and why we are where we are in the world. Further, it really struck me that the amount of attacks we were taking on our convoys, moving fuel from point A to point B on the battlefield, very well could have been drilled, refined, exported, sold to the DoD, and basically attacked and having a soldier killed on the battlefield at the same point of where the oil came from originally. And that really resonated with me and really informed what I wanted to do after my time in uniform, and what really motivated me to dedicate my career after my service to the clean energy space. So moving from there into investing in clean energy is not a linear path at all, but it has that motivation of kind of really where the passion starts from. And I had a great fortune to go to business school to learn new language, learn some of the skills to be a part of and help run a business. And I had some great opportunities to work in the wind sector at Acciona for 5 years, doing a lot of merger and acquisition work, which is really what helped give me the network skills and relationships to be successful in starting up Clean Capital, which I did with a fellow Army veteran, John Powers. And it was literally on a whim of, hey, I think we've been talking about doing our own thing for years. We should go off and do it. And we jumped off 2 feet in with a couple of the co-founders to start Clean Capital in 2016. And a lot of it, our success came from the relationships that were formed and the motivations of why we were doing what we were doing in the energy space. So as far as the investing side of the house, I could say that relationships and the tenacity to see things through were absolutely critical in our success. Due diligence, assessing risk in projects is something that are skills that I think lend very well to the military experience, and understanding how to really triage a problem and how to bring teams together to solve problems. While I do a lot of merger and acquisition work, I also, as you mentioned, Greg, do some business development work that supports the Department of Defense, which are not necessarily related or correlated whatsoever, but very similarly. It's about problem solving. It's about bringing teams together. It's about assessing risk and understanding how to move projects forward. So a lot of it's been with the grace of great relationships, but as well as building those skills along the way to understand how to assess risk.
Kevin, you just really touched upon many, many important points, a lot of which were the reasons why Veterans Advanced Energy Project was started. You shared with us earlier, you and Dan Mish, ideating about, how to, build a bridge for veterans who want to continue to serve, in this case, in the clean energy industry. I think it was at one point where we had lost more service members in defending fuel convoys than we had in close contact with the enemy in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, this is something that veterans intuitively get, having defended and planned and in some cases lost comrades along the way. I mean, you were bringing me back a little bit. My first day in Squadron Command in Iraq in 2004, Al Assad came out of breakfast and saw this big billowing black cloud exactly where my squadron was arrayed, and thinking for sure it was a direct indirect rocket attack on my squadron, when streaming over there to discover it had been an indirect rocket attack right on a berm just adjacent to my squadron, missed my aircraft by about maybe 50 meters or so. So there it is. We live and die by petroleum. When we're forward, we need to fix that. Dan, let me turn to you. You've come at this problem of clean energy and national security from a different perspective than, for example, Kevin, who spoke mainly at the federal level. Your focus has been more regional and state, largely focused on Ohio and Kentucky, both in the Ohio National Guard and now as Ohio Energy Policy Director. Dan, how did your National Guard experience lead you to clean energy? And do you see the challenge of transitioning to clean energy differently as a result of that perspective?
Well, good morning, Greg, and thank you. You said the problem of clean energy and national security. Let's rephrase that and call it the opportunity.
Great.
That's how I view this, and I'm really glad to be here. I get really motivated when I connect with groups like this. The Veteran Advanced Energy Project has been a great resource for me, and I know it can be for our audience. So I was excited to be invited here, and also the work of the Atlantic Council. Very, very appreciative from my perspective. I want to be clear about one thing before I answer your question, is that I was an enlisted guy. I wasn't an officer. I didn't go to West Point. I'm not a CEO. I grew up in Auglaize County in Northwest Ohio, okay? And I got a finance degree from Bowling Green State University in Wood County in Northwest Ohio. And it was enlisting in the Ohio Army National Guard that allowed me to pay for that education and have that opportunity. So I bring a little bit of a different perspective. And we've talked a little bit this morning about the need to move fuel through convoys and other things in theater to protect our troops overseas. So I want to talk a little bit about what I did in Iraq, which I don't even know if our other panelists know about what I did over there. But I was on a mission called Task Force Iron Claw. We were an IED search team, and I left a son who was 3 weeks old to go to that war and do this job. My brother deployed with me. It was a very difficult time for my family, but what I did was I was a 50 caliber machine gun operator on a tail vehicle of an IED search team that would go down the road about 2 to 3 miles an hour looking for things that were suspicious. And a lot of times we found IEDs, and a lot of times IEDs found us, okay? But our job was to clear the route so that we could move those convoys through. So it's not just those convoys getting hit, it's the combat engineers like the unit that I was in that's going out in advance of moving those convoys through. And I'm telling you, we would clear a route and move a convoy through immediately, and the convoy would still get hit. And so you were never like that. It's just an endless battle, literally, to try and defend against that and prepare for it. And so this is a very real issue that our men and women serving in our armed forces are dealing with overseas, and not just some abstract construct. But I have to say, it was nice serving with my brother. You know, he was the tail 50 gunner on his unit. He was first platoon, I was second platoon. So when I would get done with my route, I would downgrade my weapon. He'd bring his over, he'd load his up. We'd talk about what we saw out on the route, give a little bit of intel, and off he'd go. And we ran these missions day and night, every day, all week. So just an interesting experience. But now, you know, a lot of the guys, strangely enough, that I served with overseas are working in Ohio's clean energy economy today. We've got about 113,000 people working in the clean energy economy, broadly defined, in Ohio right now, and 11% employees are military veterans from Ohio. So that's something I'm really proud of, and I'm always trying to bring attention to that in my work in the state. And what I'm trying to do here is bring different groups together to focus on where the through lines are for our work. You don't have to be a climate advocate, right? NRDC is concerned with our climate. We're working on climate solutions. You don't have to be a climate advocate to recognize that the solutions for climate are good for a whole host of other reasons, including our national security and for our military. So the challenge that I've had in Ohio that I'm always working on is getting our state leaders to see those through lines, to see that overlap, and to remove the political divide that surrounds some of this conversation. It's my opinion that our audience here today has the ability to transcend that political divide on these issues. Military veterans are a trusted source. We volunteered to put on a uniform and serve our country. And when we came home and became civilians, we continued to serve because of the passion that we have that Heather talked about earlier today. And so I just think we cannot allow ourselves to get bogged down in divisiveness and political divide. But instead look for ways to come together. And that's what we're trying to do in Ohio right now. It's not an easy task, but I think military veterans have an ability to lead in this conversation.
You know, Dan, that was a great answer in all sorts of respects, not the least of which is, you know, you kind of sit at the epicenter of the transition that we're seeing from old energy to new energy to clean energy. Ohio, coal mining country. Petroleum country, and a lot of veterans, of course, have been employed by those industries and continue to be employed by those industries. So, you know, I mean, you really have a great perspective on how we transition smartly in a socially responsible way, so that entire generation of workers, mainly older veterans now, don't get left behind as we transition to clean energy. Is that something that you spent a lot of time thinking about?
A lot of time, yeah. That you could say that. Look, Ohio, the state of Ohio has retired more coal-fired power plants than any other state in the union. Okay, we've got over 16 gigawatts though now of utility scale solar that's being developed in Ohio, and so I'm working with like our labor unions, for example. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers has their helmet to hard hats program, and so we're looking at that and looking at the skills translation from military service and even traditional energy generation jobs to see how can we bring you into this growing clean energy economy. There was just a report came out by the Ohio University that I think it's like if half of what we see in the queue for Ohio, and this is only looking at solar, if half of that was to move forward, that's an $18 billion economy with over 55,000 construction jobs, which can become careers in our electrical trades. So the transition is very real. It's very much happening. But again, it's getting people to see those through lines and to come together to recognize that this is where our future is going, and that to this conversation, we can help our military veterans and improve our national security by embracing this.
Workforce development, of course, is a key aspect to what you're talking about. And we'll get to that a little bit more as we go through this program. I'd like all of you to kind of touch on workforce development for those transitioning veterans and for current veterans as we move through this discussion. Mark, let me turn to you. You're deeply experienced in the wind power space. Did your military experience beating the wind into submission as a rotor wing pilot inform your thinking about the transformative potential of wind power at the local, state, and regional level? And more seriously, can you tell us how Apex views the near, medium, and long-term prospects for wind power in the U.S.?
Sure. Yeah, of course. It's amazing how similar the mechanical architecture of a helicopter is to a wind turbine. But, my transition, I think, was very similar to the folks on this call. If, people join the military because they're interested in a mission. At the time that I joined, it was the heart of the Cold War, and it was an exciting mission to be in the Navy, and it was rewarding. We were keeping the sea lanes open. As I got into my sea tours, I ended up doing 3 deployments to the Persian Gulf, and it became very clear, that a big part of that mission was about energy. So that was always in the back of my mind. And as I thought about transition to a civilian career, I'm coming back to California where we were based, and in Palm Springs for the first time with my future wife, and saw the utility wind turbines there. And that was like the folks on this call, an epiphany for me, thinking about energy as why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you take energy out of thin air? And I knew what I wanted to do. And the thing that is so common for folks in the military is that you learn a specialty within the military, be it maintaining aircraft, or you're on airframes or engines, or you're doing logistics, and you're part of a team, and everyone has such a valuable part of that. And as I got into renewable energy, it was the same thing. I came in with what is going to be my specialty? And as I learned the industry, I wanted not only to get into the technology of the wind, but build teams. And that is the exciting part about coming into clean energy, is there's so many different aspects of our industry that people who come with a military background can find places where they have direct correlation to the work that we're doing. They can learn the industry and then become leaders. And where I see wind, and we're also doing solar going here, is energy transition is happening. The cost of wind and solar is so low that it is just moving forward. And we're going to be growing not just from a deployment standpoint, but from an operations standpoint. So And the mission is great. I've been in nearly 20 years right now, and I find it just as rewarding as the military was. We're helping local communities, and we'll continue to do that. And we're doing our work as has been said on this call in red states and blue states, and we have something to offer for rural communities who want to find employment for their for people who are taking over farms. And it is like, it is something that I'm strongly encouraging. It is a generational adventure for us to transition from fossil fuels to clean energy.
So you really did address that last question and comment. You are helping your region transition to clean energy responsibly, carrying along veterans and your region with it. There's a workforce development angle to this, and I want to get at that. We have a question from William Doe that I think points to this. He says, I understand the excellent opportunity for college-educated officers to pursue clean energy leadership and investment opportunities, but at the ground level, what are the opportunities for young ex-enlisted in being a solar or wind technician, not necessarily a manager, but a blue-collar veteran who don't have a college degree? What are those opportunities? And I'll ask this across the board to our panel. Starting first with you, Mark, what would your advice be to William and those like him who want to transition to, if you will, the wrench turning, the blue collar side of the clean energy industry, based upon their skill set and their inclinations?
I would strongly encourage them to, to take a look at the wind and solar business. There's so many opportunities. We are, the competencies are very broad and applicable to what sailors, soldiers, Marines have been doing in their career from a wrench turning perspective. Solar and wind technicians are the fastest growing fields in the U.S. economy right now. And you can get in, learn the business, and become expert in that, and then there's leadership opportunities. So we're as we deploy more, we need more people, and our fossil fuel industry is at a cost disadvantage to other places, and the only way that they can be competitive really is to be more efficient in producing oil and natural gas. That means trying to cut jobs. We're expanding, and this is the place you want to be for your civilian career, in my view, is the clean energy industry.
So just to follow that up just a little bit, and then I'll turn it to Dan to discuss this as well. If I'm a former enlisted logistician, mechanic, wrench turner. I've got some real skills, avionics, and you name it. I've got some real skills that I've developed, per my MOS, that seem to go, set me up well for advanced energy, solar, wind, the ones you mentioned, but aren't quite right. What's out there in terms of workforce development, additional training that would actually get me to the point where I'm competitive for the job I want, or I can do the job that's being asked, with confidence? You want to take a first shot at that, Mark, and I'll turn it over to Dan from there.
Sure. There is considerable entry-level opportunities in the wind and solar field, and they're looking for discipline. They're looking for a track record of working with teams, and there's very robust training programs for people as they come in. That no one expects someone to have identical kind of process skill sets when they come in, but the background that the military provides in understanding how to have a commitment to operational performance is key. And we have if you go to our website, you can see some of the videos we have. We've hired so many people from the military, and they're very successful as they transition. And we're building our training programs so that not only are they doing the direct work, but they're able to grow as well.
Great, thank you for that, Dan. What's going on at the Ohio National Defense Council with regard to workforce development and what kind of advice would you offer William Doe about that?
Yeah, Greg, I can jump in here. William, it's a great question. And first thing I'll say is, don't try to do it alone. It's tough. There's a lot of resources, a lot of stuff to think about. We could say, I just Googled real quick while I was sitting here, top growing clean energy careers. And this is a 3-year-old article, but I know it's still accurate. Wind turbine technician, solar installer, and then clean car engineer. I could get into tons of detail about each of those topics, but the industry's growing quickly. But there's a lot of companies, and it's hard to find all the time what those job opportunities are. So just recognize that as a veteran, you have a family out here that can help you. The Veteran Advanced Energy Project is a great place to connect. They'll connect you to resources so that you can translate your skills, so that when you go into an interview, you're not just saying, hey, I'm a vet, you should hire me. You're saying, I'm a vet with these skills that I know you're looking for. You can get that help and be better prepared to pursue that industry. And again, being a family, we can connect you to a network, talk to people, get in front of folks to where you can identify where the opportunities are in the area that you live. I don't see in your question where you are geographically, but I'm sure that this group here and others in our network could easily connect you to the right place. But just understand that the leap from your military service to a clean energy career is not a massive leap. Your skills translate, and by connecting to groups like the ones that are putting this event on today are going to help you to find that opportunity. So reach out and engage, and we'll get you connected. I'll just share a quick anecdote. I was out on Veterans Day, actually, sitting at B-Dubs having free chicken wings and beer. And I'm talking to the guy who was serving the drinks. It turns out he's a Marine. He just moved to Ohio from Hawaii and is studying power engineering at the Ohio State University. And we just hit it off and started talking about what his interests were. And I've already started to connect him all over our network. I think he's tuned in here today, maybe even paying attention. So it's just right away. He's not even ready to pursue the career yet, but we're getting him connected to a network so that when he's ready for that, he'll be able to move quickly. So just encourage you to engage, connect, and lean on your military family.
Dan, you touched on a number of important points there. I think for our transitioning veterans, that remind me a little bit of a discussion we had, many of you were a part of, in our Veterans Advanced Energy Week with veteran CEOs, talking about the skill sets that veterans bring to the table in the advanced energy industry. And they talk mainly not upon those wrench turning skills, which are obviously important, but also the intangibles that you mentioned, Dan, the leadership, the team building, the working well as a part of a team, the mission orientation, right? The things you can't quite put a finger on, but veterans have them in spades. So I want to turn to a comment made by David Zabatakis here that I think is really telling. He said, it's in addressing William, that earlier question, he said, you'll get a great answer from this esteemed. I've been in the sector for 34 years after leaving as an E6 crew chief in the Air Force. I eventually became CEO and chairman of various companies, public utility to startup to private equity. So yes, the opportunities are there. After you get the great advice you get from this group, you're welcome to connect with me as well. Thank you, David Zabatakis, for that answer and that help for William and others on this call, I'm certain. So a guy who's been in the business for 34 years, and once again, part of the family that Dan just addressed. Kevin, let me turn to you. What advice would you offer, William, in terms of, an enlisted blue collar kind of guy who's looking to transition to that sort of job within the advanced energy industry?
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg, for the opportunity to comment. And, I know a lot of times, some of us that have been in the industry for a while can come off as, sitting in ivory towers as president and CEO of these companies. But for me, at my core, what I didn't mention in my intro is I'm originally from Scranton, Pennsylvania, right? So blue collar guy at heart that really is more foundational than the whole Iraq story. And so really it's important to me, we talk about these things, to be very, tactical and direct to, give folks specific opportunities of where to look and how to connect, right? 'Cause that's the hardest part is like, okay, what's my next step? So I would recommend, Heather and I were on a panel yesterday with the Solar Energy Industry Association that was highlighting the Solar Ready Vets program. So I highly recommend looking into that program that helps veterans in transition or post-transition get more skills in the solar industry. And another question that came up was, well, is it only solar and wind? And the short answer is absolutely not. Battery storage is a quickly growing field, definitely one of the key aspects going forward in our energy future. And the Solar Energy Industry Association is also starting to do a lot of work in battery storage. That program, again, is a really good resource to look into. On the wind side, there's programs run by companies like Airstreams is one to look up. And there are other programs like that do very specific climb training, focus at veterans that are going into the wind turbine technician field. And last thing I highlighted is just on nominal numbers. There are over, I think, about 20 to 25,000 veterans today in this advanced energy economy, right? So it's not just the four of us here in this panel that are at the CEO level. There are 20,000 of us out there that have similar backgrounds and motivations and stories. LinkedIn is a tremendous resource to find some of those vets that have a similar background. And I highly recommend reaching out through that channel and finding those companies and finding the vets in those companies, because we're out there. The programs like this Veterans Advanced Energy Project are great connecting tools to connect you into those companies where those veterans do reside that can help with that bridge as you transition over. So thanks, Greg, for the opportunity.
That's great comments, Kevin. Great tools that you preferred there. I want to bring in another one from one of our listeners, Brett Feldman. He says that his company participates in American Corporate Partners, which is www.acptacusa.org, which pairs veterans with private sector mentors. He personally, Brett Feldman, has helped 3 veterans who are interested in clean energy careers. So once again, part of the family that Dan referred to, and the resources that Kevin alluded to as well. Hey, Heather, let me come back to you with regard to Christopher Riddle's questions that Kevin just touched upon. Christopher says renewables are more than solar and wind. What opportunities are there in renewable outside wind and solar? Or is that it, he said?
Definitely not it, as Kevin mentioned. So energy storage is not just batteries, but it's also all kinds of other technology that I won't claim to understand as a non-engineer. And green hydrogen is the latest and greatest buzzword that I hear. That also, leverages what I'll refer back to is utilities. I think are great transition type companies. They're large. They're willing to take chances. Like Brett mentioned, they've got programs specifically for veterans. They have a lot of blue collar jobs available as well. And they're doing, the old energy and the new energy more and more these days, so that you can get a chance to do both and apply those skills that you have from the military days. And honestly, to go back to the skills question, I think it's, it's not so much about training, because I think there is a lot of on the job training that companies are willing to do for veterans, because they know they'll give 110%. At least amongst the veteran community, and it's becoming more understood outside of the veteran community. When you hire a veteran, you've got a pretty high degree of probability of success and performance, because we know what veterans are willing to give when they're committed, and it helps to have in this industry that commitment. So hydrogen was the other one that came to mind, energy storage. And, I think that also the thing to think about is there are all types of levels to look at for wind and solar. Everything from the utility scale, like Mark's company, I think, does a lot more of, but down to the residential and deployment of distributed generation. You can also get in the clean energy space a lot about technology and software. If anyone has that kind of bend, there's just some fantastic innovative companies that aren't necessarily about the specific source of energy of wind or solar, but they're also about the innovation of either the technology or financing, as Kevin and Clean Capital were doing, in so many different areas where you don't have to be specific to one particular technology of renewable.
That's great, Heather. Super helpful. You know, it reminds me also, you know, as we kind of expand the prism here to the broad array of clean energy opportunities are out there, public, private, nonprofit, big, medium, small. Our own Global Energy Center right now is doing a series on microgrids and grids really, grid resilience, critical infrastructure resilience, compatibility, regulations, policies in support of modernizing the grid, in support of all the sources, wind, solar, nuclear, hydrogen, all the ones that have been mentioned. So that's a whole nother aspect, is the grid part of it. Dr. Nate Johnson at Arizona State University, who has worked with us at Veterans Advanced Energy Project, is running a program out there at ASU focused upon microgrids for third world countries and operational energy applications in DoD. So there's just lots of interesting avenues that you could take here. Let your imagination run wild. This is where the industry is going. Lots of stuff going on in nuclear, right? Modular nuclear reactors. You know why they say about it.
I didn't forget that one on purpose. That's a very sometimes contentious one. But.
Exactly. So for information, Richard Lawrence offers, there's for those interested in solar, www.americansolarworkforce.org. You can get information. Richard also offers that solar wind technicians, high demand, fastest growing job occupation, wages are more than 25% above the national median wages in those industries. Brandon Boucher asked an interesting question, coming at it from a slightly different perspective. So he says, what if your veteran entrepreneur has produced products or services and wants to get them in front of companies like yours, right? That may find use for them. How can they help innovate the industry? Anyone want to take a shot at that one?
So I'll take a shot and pass it over quickly, just following up, Greg. And by the way, on the technology, Richard also mentioned energy efficiency. I can't believe I left out, because it's the cheapest form of clean energy. Electric vehicles and charging are hot as well. Before this company in this role, I was a founder of a consulting company. So was a veteran entrepreneur myself, and there are just amazing amounts of opportunities for veterans, especially with serving public entities. And I think others could probably speak well to this as well. But once you figure out the game, and if I can say it that way, if you can figure out all of the resources that are available, usually at the state level, also at the federal level, there are entities hungry to have veterans serve their organizations. And usually it starts with getting the company certified as a veteran-owned business in most states and at the federal level.
That's a great answer. Here's a question from Kyle Hoppy. What opportunities do you see for defense contractors, various flavors, big, medium, small, to partner with DoD and align energy goals for facilities and installations? Kevin, this is right up your alley. You want to touch upon that one?
Sure, absolutely. Innovating in the DoD space is challenging, but what I would say, what I report back is, we highlighted earlier, one of the lessons learned coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan is that the DoD, following General Mattis's famous memo, really understood the risk, both forward deployed, but also now here at home. That our installations are, I think as they was recently defined, are no longer a sanctuary. Our homeland is no longer a sanctuary. So there's an understanding that there's a need to innovate. That takes quite a long time for policy to be pushed down to the service branches, and then of course for things to be implemented. What I would say is that there is a growing appetite for those innovations, and the market is moving to meet those opportunities. Myself at GlidePath, this is where I primarily focus, in addition to the merger and acquisition work that is somewhat separate and different on the commercial side. But what we're seeing is, as an example, that a lot of the time delays that occur are because of all the things that have to happen inside the installation. And where I think a lot of opportunity lies, in the area where I focus is looking off the base. Right, our military communities are communities. Right, it's not just the base, but it's the entire community around the base. So there are a lot of opportunities out there to look at innovating, to bring commercial solutions, microgrid solutions to substations that feed into the respective base. Looking at opportunities to include battery storage and solar that could serve the needs of not just the base on the other side of that substation, but the community surrounding it. So that's an area where I would highly recommend looking into. There are a lot of bases out there that we know are more important than others. So again, narrowing down for those are, I think, another area to focus on.
Yeah, Kevin, I can come in and add to that, electrification at DoD is becoming a major push, and we're seeing that at domestic military installations. It's something I'm trying to put as much focus on as I can. I recently reached a settlement agreement with Dayton Power and Light in the Dayton area in Ohio, where we're going to look together at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and the different ways that we can improve energy resilience there. That case has to go through a process and get approval through the right regulatory authority. So we're not ready to move that forward, but it's a critical opportunity. And it goes beyond just our military installations, to be clear, right? It's also, our police, our fire, our hospitals, and all these other critical facilities that we need to be able to operate when the grid goes down. And one area that they're going to focus on is transportation electrification. I think in a Biden administration, you're going to see a lot of focus on this. And when we talked about growing industries, this industry is massive. And what you look at what's happening right now, I think there's around 170 mega battery factories around the world. There's maybe a handful of those that are in the United States. The overwhelming majority is controlled by China. You're seeing the European Union starting to move on this. But we saw this through the COVID pandemic, that we've got to onshore our manufacturing. We got to bring domestic manufacturing to the United States. These are critical supplies for our military and for all these other industries that are electrifying and going to rely on battery technology, including our military. And so you're going to see a lot of investment, billions and billions of dollars going into battery material manufacturing. You can't change where minerals are deposited in the ground, okay? But you can control where the chemical processing is done, where the cathode and anode manufacturing are done. Everything up to vehicle manufacturing and recycling of these batteries can be geographically brought to the United States. And so in Ohio, I'm proud to say that our state took a leading role and attracted one of these mega battery factories up to the Lordstown area. We're creating what's called Voltage Valley. We want to make Ohio a supply hub for the big OEMs who are electrifying transportation. And so we have an opportunity, particularly in Ohio, to really do some major investment in job creation. And it's going to require all kinds of skills, to the question earlier about what other opportunities are there for folks who may have just been enlisted or, have only a graduate degree or an undergrad degree.
Dan, you've just very nicely linked clean energy to U.S. national interests, which is something that we wanted to talk about in this discussion. That's exactly right. Lithium-ion batteries is a perfect example of how the U.S. is at national security risk because of the 80% ownership of the supply chain by the Chinese. So here's a great way that a former service member can continue to serve U.S. national interests in the battery space.
Well, and it's economic interest, right, Greg? I mean, think about this. In Ohio,
right,
we're the one producer of engines and the number 2 producer of transmissions. Electric vehicles don't have either one of those things, and the OEMs are going totally in this direction. And so there's a lot of reasons that it serves our national security interests, but also our economic interests.
And also, back to Kevin's earlier point about the fact that, the way to look at the military installations is not so much the military installations alone, but rather the entire defense community. As you all probably know, Associated Defense Communities takes that defense community perspective and has written legislation such as DCIP, Defense Community Infrastructure Program, $50 million of grants that are out there, DoD grants for infrastructure, critical infrastructure projects that support the military installation, military families, to include clean energy. So lots of opportunities out there to work with the installations, particularly as we go into an administration that looks to be investing significantly in clean energy and resistance to climate change. We have a comment here from Jeffrey Dickinson. Don't forget biomass and biogas opportunities, a real and growing industry but do require a higher level of local understanding and interaction. So another opportunity out there. Here's an interesting question from Brian Dowdy. How robust and mature is the domestic supply chain, especially 2 or 3 levels down for renewables? Certainly an appropriate question given what we've seen with COVID. How many of them are converting from other manufacturing industries or adding them to their existing product portfolios? Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, Greg, I'll turn it over. Maybe Mark could talk about this to some degree, but I'll just give a shout out real quick to my state. We're a major wind manufacturing state. We're a major solar manufacturing state as well. The largest solar panel manufacturing facility in the Western Hemisphere is in Perrysburg, Ohio. So we're building projects here. We're building them with Ohio Parks, and it feels real good in the state of Ohio. But I'm sure there's someone who could talk more broadly to the supply chain across the United States.
Mark, you want to take a shot at that one?
Sure. I mean, it's like super important for the U.S. To continue to maintain a stable policy on renewables. And what that does is enable manufacturing to have confidence to set up in the U.S. And as the market continues to grow, which it's doing, it is in the interest of the industry and of manufacturers to have local manufacturing, like Dan mentions in Ohio. That is right. It is Ohio is one of the largest like manufacturer for the wind industry. That as a state, they need to step up from a policy perspective to be a positive place to develop wind energy, which has been problematic in the recent past. But those manufacturing supply chain jobs are deepening. On the surface, it starts out as like large blade manufacturing and large in assembly places, but as the industry progresses, the supply chain becomes deeper. There's foundries. There's more and more parts of the supply chain are in the U.S. and that is hard hat jobs that are great paying jobs and like more than a living wage. It is a great career to be in the manufacturing industry in the U.S. And I wanted to go back to the DoD side of things. Apex it did a groundbreaking transaction with the Defense Logistics and the Army doing the largest power purchase agreement, which featured them buying power from 50 megawatts from a larger 200 megawatt wind farm off base and allowing us to install a 15 megawatt facility in Fort Hood. And it was a blended PPA that combined the behind the meter solar with the low cost of the off-base wind. And it not only did it provide energy security for the Army and for Fort Hood, but it also lowered their costs significantly. So the message is this more procurement's going to be happening with the DoD and the U.S. government, and people that have that experience of procurement for the military will be helpful in companies like myself, which are doing transactions with the Department of Defense for the first time, and it's not straightforward. So there is opportunities there. And one other point on the wrench turning, it's wrench turning and operations is important, but one of the biggest things that we do is development. That is like a huge part of scope. And people that come from a military background know project management, and they have a great advantage in when they come into local communities, as people are open arms to veterans, and that's a great help for us in hiring people that are outgoing and can do project management and that communities want to welcome. So I encourage people to look at the development side of our business as well.
That's a great answer. Okay, we're starting to get a little bit short on time, so I'm going to ask all of you to kind of address our audience here, and if you were them, transitioning veterans or recently transitioned veterans who want to get into the clean energy, the advanced energy industry, what would your advice to them be? And what is your call to action? Heather, let's start with you. Let's go through the lineup.
Sure, absolutely. So hit the ground running. It takes time to do the work, the networking, and reaching out and finding what companies, what roles you want to play in. But once you have sight on that and you've done the hard work, there will be an opportunity, because veterans help veterans, and that's just known. And thankfully, in today's day and age, in the technology that we have, it's a lot easier to do that networking. So do what you've always done, and 110%, but do the ground bottom up work.
Yeah.
Thank you. One thing we have to hit on is that we're in a COVID world, right? So things are much harder. Here we are doing this via Zoom, right? So yes, veterans help veterans, but it's harder where we're not seeing each other as much in open settings. But what I would also offer is don't forget someone on the other line that you want to reach out to is not commuting either, right? So they might have an hour or two more time than they did before. So reach out. Reach out to folks that you find that are similar background as you. They want to help. I can't tell you how many times folks reach out and follow up. I think one of the key things is absolutely to follow up. And it's an extremely, extremely small world. One thing Mark, I'll leave you with, I don't think you knew this, is that ironically in a previous role, I actually supplied those solar panels to that project at Fort Hood in a role that I had at Canadian Solar. So, as the DoD aspect moves forward, there's going to be a very strong Buy American Act or Trade Agreement Act compliant requirements. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for manufacturing in the U.S. Developing for there. So my call to action would be as you move forward, bring someone with you, look at your resources and tools you have at your disposal. There are ways to use your GI Bill benefits for certifications with organizations like NABCEP. So look into those tools you have at your disposal and your network, and definitely ask for help. Folks want to give it.
All right, great. Dan, Mark, real quick, call to action.
Yeah, sorry, real quick. I would say, if you're looking for work now, don't be afraid to reach out to your local labor union. They're doing a lot in this space. They roll out the red carpet for our veterans. Connect with the Veteran Advanced Energy Project, connect to this network and lean on them. Don't be afraid to send a letter to your local lawmaker or your governor and let them know that you're a military veteran and you're looking for work in this career and you want their support politically. Tell your story, not just to them, but broadly. Don't be afraid to get out. There's a lot of people help you to tell your story, get out and tell it. And after you're successful in this, as I know you will be, stick by your military family and help others.
Great. Mark, last word.
Yeah, I would say, this is the best. This is a great industry to be in. I didn't get directly into it out of the military. I developed a skill set in technical sales in telecom, and I had my eye on how do I get into renewables, and the skills that I developed in that first civilian job were transferable and helped me to get to where I wanted to be. But so don't be discouraged if some other sector is the best place for you to land right away. Keep your eye on renewables, and we hire directly from the military, but then people who have developed a skill set from another industry also have a leg up, and the military experience will still be extremely valuable.
Well, that's a great wrap up. So thanks to everyone for joining us for this productive conversation. Thanks to our panelists for being here, sharing their perspectives, like to thank Zach Strauss, Laura Mikado, Jackson Styron, Roger Morales for their work in organizing today's event. If you'd like to rewatch today's event or share the screen with a colleague, you can find a cache replay on Atlantic website and YouTube channel. And more for Global Energy Center content, please join us after Thanksgiving, Tuesday, December 1st at 10 a.m. Eastern for a discussion with U.S. and Icelandic geothermal experts on potential for geothermal development in the United States. Thank you for joining us, and see you at the next Global Energy Center event.
Thanks, everyone.